Heartless little brats, you three are a disgrace to this community, one of the women hissed, standing mere inches from my youngest daughter's tear-streaked face. I arrived just in time to hear those words, sharp, cruel, and delivered as if they were a verdict in a courtroom where we had never been allowed to speak. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I simply smiled, looked the woman straight in the eye and said, "Thank you." Then I turned and walked away. That moment, calm on the outside but burning inside, marked the start of everything. It had started out as a simple morning, just me and my two daughters, Natalie and Grace, at the Saturday market, something we did almost every weekend. Fresh produce, local honey, handmade chocolates. It was a small pocket of peace after a long and traumatic year. 8 months had passed since my ex-husband's death. He was 48, killed in a sudden, shocking car accident. The kind of phone call that splits your life in two, before and after. But as if death alone wasn't enough, what followed shattered our family to its core. You see, just 3 weeks before his death, I had filed for divorce after discovering his affair. A long-term relationship that had resulted in twin boys. When the woman died in the same accident that claimed his life, it left the boys orphaned, exposing everything he had worked so hard to conceal. My daughters were the ones who found out. They discovered the photos, the texts, and knew the truth before I did. They carried the pain of betrayal, not just from their father but from a man they had once trusted completely. So when my ex-in-laws started demanding to see them, even fighting for custody as if nothing had happened, my girls said no. They were clear about what they needed: space, therapy, healing. Apparently, no wasn't good enough. That Saturday was Grace's 15th birthday. As a surprise, I gave her a small budget and let her and Natalie wander the market together. They were gone maybe 45 minutes when I got the call. Grace's voice was shaking. "Mom, these women, they won't let us leave. They're yelling about Grandma and Grandpa. They're saying horrible things." By the time I arrived, Natalie had already stepped in front of her sister, shielding her from the group, 6 older women, all dressed in Sunday best, as if they'd just stepped out of a sermon and into a stoning. I recognized 3 of them from the church my ex-in-laws had attended for years. Women who had once brought casseroles but now spat accusations like venom. They called it unchristian behavior, accusing us of being ungrateful, heartless, and refusing to care for our orphaned baby brothers. Natalie tried to speak, but I stepped in front of her. "You've made your point," I said calmly. "Now get away from my daughters." One of the women scoffed, "You're no better. A wife should never turn her husband's family away. You've turned those girls into bitter rebels. Shameful, absolutely shameful." That's when I smiled and said, "Thank you." We were escorted out of the market shortly after. The scene had drawn attention, and the market staff, unsure of who was at fault, just wanted everyone gone. The women followed us to the parking lot, watching, judging, whispering. I got my girls into the car and drove off without a word. But something inside me had shifted. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. It wasn't just about grief, boundaries, or misunderstandings. This was harassment, manipulation, and it was coordinated. That night, after my daughters went to bed, I logged into Facebook. There it was, on the private page of the church my ex-in-laws belonged to, a post written by my former mother-in-law. It was nearly 1,000 words, framed like a prayer request but dripping with deception. She claimed that we had abandoned her, refused to care for the boys, inherited everything, and left her and her husband penniless. She also accused my daughters of rejecting their duty as sisters. The final blow was the claim that the boys were the result of a surrogacy arrangement, that I was infertile, and that I had rejected them because they were boys. A lie so twisted, so cruel, it stole my breath. I sat in the dark, rereading it, my fingers trembling, not with sadness but with rising resolve. They thought they could rewrite the story, but I had something they didn't: receipts. The next morning I didn't go to work. I called in a personal day, brewed the strongest coffee I could make, and sat down at the kitchen table with a stack of old folders, my laptop, and a thumb drive I had almost forgotten about. My hands moved steadily, almost mechanically, as if they'd been waiting for this moment. I didn't feel rage, not in the way I thought I would. What I felt was clarity. Cold, focused, unshakable. Because if they wanted to weaponize lies and sympathy, I would fight back with the truth. Not just for me but for my daughters. The thumb drive contained everything I had gathered in the months leading up to the divorce. Screenshots of text messages between my ex and his affair partner, photos of the two of them together. Some in our house. Bank records showing money transfers to her. Emails between my ex and his parents discussing how to ease the girls into the idea of new siblings. But that wasn't all I had saved. I had voicemails too. One from my ex-mother-in-law just days after his death, blaming Natalie and Grace for his death, saying if they hadn't pushed me to leave he'd still be alive. Another voicemail from his father, slurring through anger, calling my daughters heartless little bastards, and ungrateful brats who will burn for turning their backs on blood. I had emails, messages, voice recordings. I had proof, and the legal right to use it. You see, my divorce hadn't been finalized before his accident. That meant the court hadn't sealed the documents. Nothing I had gathered was under legal protection, which meant I could use everything. By noon, I was standing at the print shop counter, handing over a flash drive to a young man with silver hair and half-moon glasses. "I need full-color, high-quality prints," I said. "Front and back, clean binding." He raised an eyebrow as he scrolled through the files. These are personal." "Yes," I replied. "And they need to look professional. Think church program meets courtroom evidence." He blinked, unsure whether to be amused or concerned. "How many copies?" 10. While I waited for the binders to be printed, I stopped at a craft supply store, picking up soft navy blue covers, gold embossed paper sleeves and glue sticks. I knew exactly what I was doing. At home I spent hours assembling the binders by hand. Each one began with a full-page photo of my ex and his affair partner kissing in our living room, the TV on in the background, my youngest daughter's art taped to the wall behind them. Beneath the photo I wrote in elegant script, "Michael Jennings and Leah Porter. A love story." It felt wicked but honest. The next pages told the full story, like chapters in a book. Text exchanges about sneaking around during family vacations. Notes from therapy sessions where my daughters expressed their trauma. Emails from his parents encouraging him to keep lying to me for the sake of peace. And finally, their cruel messages to my girls, some written just 2 days after his funeral. By midnight, I had all 10 binders lined up on the kitchen counter. Identical. Neat. Devastating. I didn't sleep much, but when I did, it was the kind of sleep that comes after a storm passes. I barely noticed at first that she had included a handwritten apology for both of my daughters. Along with that was a formal invitation from the church's Women's Council, asking if I'd consider attending a reconciliation lunch. I stared at it for what felt like a long time before setting it aside. There would be no reconciliation, not when Natalie had spent 2 months in therapy blaming herself for tearing the family apart. And not when Grace still had nightmares of her grandmother's cruel voice, telling her she was broken just like her mother. No lunch could undo that. That evening, while we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, Grace suddenly spoke up, her voice shaky. "Mom, do you think Grandma really thinks we're evil?" I turned to her. Her eyes looked distant, almost glassy. Natalie paused the movie without a word. I reached over and took Grace's hand, holding it gently. "No, sweetheart. I think she's scared. Scared that if people see the truth, they'll realize she's not who she pretends to be. Instead of owning her role in this, she's blamed the only people who never had a choice." Grace didn't respond right away, but she leaned into my shoulder and stayed there. Natalie resumed the movie, but we never finished it. The next morning my lawyer called. "I've just been served notice," she said. "Your ex-in-laws have officially filed for custody of the girls." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Of course they did. "They're not going to win," I replied calmly. "I know," she said, "but we'll need to be thorough. They're claiming emotional neglect, saying the girls are being turned against their only remaining blood relatives, that they're being protected from people who call them names. My patience snapped. I agree with you, but we'll need documentation. All of it. I opened the desk drawer where my folder of evidence waited. That evening, after the girls went to bed, I sat at my laptop and began compiling everything. Emails, voicemails, social media posts, screenshots from the church's Facebook group before it was taken down, and of course the binders. If they wanted to drag this to court, I'd be ready. But what they didn't realize was this: they'd already lost. The community wasn't backing them anymore. The girls knew the truth, and I wasn't alone. The subpoena arrived on a Thursday, neatly tucked into a manila envelope, hand-delivered by a process server who asked with a forced politeness, "Are you Kira Jennings?" I nodded, took the envelope and closed the door without a word. Inside, it contained everything. My ex-in-laws Henry and Elaine Jennings had formally filed for emergency custody of Natalie and Grace. They claimed that I was emotionally unstable, bitter over my husband's death, and poisoning the girls against their true family. I stared at the page for a long moment. They'd crossed a line. Before, they were just meddling and manipulative, but now they were dangerous. I immediately called my lawyer. "They're pushing hard," she said, flipping through the documents. "They've requested a hearing within 3 weeks. That's unusually fast. Can they do that?" "They can request it," she replied. "But it's only granted in cases of actual emergencies, abuse, drug use, or severe neglect. You have none of that. They're hoping to catch you off guard, but they're going to be disappointed." The next few days became a blur of preparation. I gathered every record I had. Therapy notes showing the girls' recovery, copies of voicemails where Elaine screamed at me, texts calling my daughters selfish little girls who destroyed their father. I even included the letter from the woman at church who had apologized to the girls because even strangers could see what was happening. My lawyer was impressed. "I've never had a client this prepared," she said. "This case is built like a fortress." "I'm a mother," I replied. "They came for my daughters. What else did they expect?" Even with the strength of our case, I wasn't prepared for what came next. It was Sunday morning when I saw the email from Megan Thompson, Natalie's former best friend's mom. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, not since the divorce had been announced. I almost ignored it, but something urged me to open it. "Kira," the email began, "I don't know how to say this, but I need you to know, I've been talking with Elaine. She reached out to me and several other moms. She's trying to get people to testify on her behalf. She's saying awful things about you, calling you unstable, emotionally abusive, and turning the girls into angry atheists." I didn't believe her, but some people are listening. I reread the paragraph 5 times, my stomach sinking. They were trying to build a case on lies, and they were using people I once trusted to do it. I called Megan immediately. "Did she say who she contacted?" "Not everyone," Megan replied, "but I know she spoke with Miss Carter from the PTA and maybe even with your neighbor, Susan." I sighed. Susan had never liked me. She always had something to criticize about my garden or my chaotic schedule. "I just thought you should know," Megan added. I told her I wasn't interested, but she's trying to build momentum. "Thank you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I always thought you were a good mom," Megan said softly. "So did Natalie. You don't deserve this." That evening, as I sat in the living room watching Natalie and Grace do homework at the dining table, I hated that I had to keep this from them. While they were beginning to breathe again, their grandparents were plotting to take that away. I wouldn't let them. The next morning, I had my lawyer draft a motion to dismiss the emergency custody request and file for a protective order, one that would legally bar my ex-in-laws from contacting the girls directly. We attached everything: screenshots, voicemails, texts, and even the binder. When my lawyer saw the opening photo, the one of Michael and Leah in our living room, she looked up at me. "It started here," I said. "Let it end with the truth." By Friday, news of the custody filing had leaked. Elaine's supporters tried to rally again, but this time, something shifted. Caleb texted me again. You wouldn't believe what's happening, he wrote. The church board has suspended Elaine's membership pending the outcome of the case, and 3 families have pulled their kids from the youth group. I was stunned. Why? Because their kids are friends with Natalie and Grace and they're tired of the hypocrisy, Caleb replied. One mom said, if that's what Christianity looks like, I want no part of it. I sat with that for a long time. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about truth, about standing up when it's easier to stay quiet. About teaching my daughters by example that when someone tries to rewrite your story, you don't hand them the pen, you take it back.